This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
Hey, Joe Walsh, former Congressman Joe Walsh. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy whatever, except we don't say Happy Holidays. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas, New Year break. Thank you for listening. This is White Flag with Joe Walsh. Every week I sit down with somebody who doesn't think like me, and I try to learn from that person who doesn't think like me, because I don't want to sit down and only talk to people who think like me. That's the whole point of White Flag with Joe Walsh. Thank you for listening. By the way, my email is joewalshwhiteflag@gmail.com. That's all one word. I am really excited for this conversation because this is an issue, and I'll get to the issue in a second, that I think I have an opinion on, but it's not a fully formed opinion. And I've had the wonderful honor to meet a couple people who have a fully formed opinion on the issue we're about to talk about and have personal experience with this issue. The issue is what we call medical aid in dying, helping loved ones end their lives in a painless way. And my guests today are, you know him, though I have fallen in love with his sister, but everybody knows French Stewart, longtime American actor, third rock from the sun, but so much more than that. French Stewart, it's an honor to be with you, my friend. And French's sister, Kelly Mcewen, who lives in New Mexico, Albuquerque, and she is a veterinary practice advocate. And I love that because I love dogs. I love all animals. Kelly and French, welcome to you both, you two.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy holiday.
I knew it. See, the son of a gun. I knew he was going to get that in. But, you know, we're not going to edit this, French, so I'll keep it in there for the record. French got a happy holidays on the books. Kelly, he's your brother. You can deal with him later. Let's get into this. And I don't remember how it started. I think, French, somebody introduced you and I. It was your lovely bride. I've always been fascinated by this issue, always been kind of troubled by this issue. And she told me, your wife did, that you and Kelly, your mom, this past fall in September, passed away, and you practiced medical aid in dying with her, kind of end of the life option. Let's start broad strokes. And you two are brother and sister, so you can interrupt each other, do whatever. But before we get into the personal of what happened with your mom, and I want to spend a lot of time talking about that, what is this? Like, medical aid in dying. What is it? How would you describe it to somebody?
Well, I can give you an actual description pretty easily. Medical aid in dying is for a mentally competent, though terminally ill person who wishes to be aided in dying. These are people that are not going to recover. And whether it is cancer or any other terminal illness, they are probably going to linger and maybe on hospice, but there is absolutely no path forward to help support them being whole again.
Okay.
And so the key to medical aid in dying that I really want to hear about is that this is only for the mentally competent, though terminally ill.
Got it.
This is not something thing for somebody with dementia.
Got it. Kelly, I'm going to stop you there. And here's one thing I'm going to request, because I want to get every damn word you say, because I find it fascinating. So don't move so we keep a great connection. Terminally ill people, mentally competent. French, informally, how would you describe it to somebody?
Well, I think honestly, it's giving a loved one who has no other option the same kindness that you would give a pet. Because I think the thing is, Kelly comes from pet care. We both had pets, and we can see how when they're done, they're done. And I know that it's more complex with a human being, but to give some context, we have a small family, and years ago we had a beloved aunt, Arvi, and she got breast cancer, and it was a long, difficult exit. And along the way, her husband, our Uncle Mike, he just swore that he would never go through that. And so he, out of fear, stockpiled whatever was left of her drugs. He joined the Hemlock Society. And maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but he got sick. He got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And he was very deliberate with me in our last phone call that he was not going to get skinny in front of the grandkids. And so ultimately what he did was that he took his life with a gun at his wife's gravesite. He had organized everything. He put a letter in his pocket telling the police that nothing bad had gone on and that this was his choice. He had put his dogs on a feeder.
Wow.
And he had envelopes with his will in the house. But the thing is that the sheer violence of having to make that decision that way, I mean, he was of sound mind. He knew where it was going, but he made a decision. But it didn't have to be that way. It could have been the same end that you would give to your pet.
It's so interesting, French and Kelly, and we'll get into this later, but I guess this goes to your philosophical or religious beliefs. Like, do you have a right to take your own life? And I don't answer that now, because I want to get into that with the both of you. Like, do you have a right to take your own life? Suicide. I find that fascinating, and we'll get back to that in a second. Kelly, start, and then I want French to jump in. I want to talk about your mom first, before then we get into the issue. Medical aid in dying. You got to be a terminally ill patient. You've got you're mentally sound.
Right.
You've got 6 months or whatever left to live. You die in your sleep. A prescription for medication. What walk me through? Begin with your mom. What was wrong with your mom? What was her situation? How did she get to this point?
Well, this is what really occurred, and I'll step a little bit back because my husband passed away 10 years ago, and he had hepatocellular carcinoma. He died of cancer, and our entire family watched a resilient young man that was a sailor, motocross, camping, basically the Indiana Jones of our life, deteriorate rapidly, and his body no longer be able to represent any of the things that he wanted to do. So we got involved with Compassion and Choices, which is about medical aid in dying. Years down the road, my mom had had a heart attack, she had had a stroke, and she was in congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
So over a 2-year period, it was difficult.
Hey, wait. Here, look at me, French. I'm breaking my own rule. I'm interrupting Kelly. Kelly, go back to your husband 10 years ago. Did you how did you engage in medical aid in dying, anything like that back then with your husband?
No, no. And let me tell you, that's why I got involved, because if we could have had that choice, it would have made all the difference. Because what happened in his situation is I used to pray every single day that he would pass because he lingered. And we're talking about somebody, and listen, I know it's a rare thing, but I had 30 years with the rock star of husbands.
That's
And
awesome.
I watched him deteriorate. And yes, we had the best hospice nurse anyone could possibly have. But when you talk about keeping people comfortable, that's relative, let me tell you, because he had two choices: be gorked out on a cocktail of morphine and all kinds of things
Yeah.
and really bedridden, or be a little bit more alert and be completely and totally suffering.
Did he,
So,
Kelly, did he ever contemplate near or at the end taking his own life?
No, because he believed in this compassion and choices as a civil right. And he said, I am willing to go through this. And actually, we talked to the doctor that was instrumental in the case in New Mexico, Dr. Kate Morris,
Yeah.
which was the impetus for the medical aid in dying. And, you know, she said, gosh, there isn't anything I would rather do than end his suffering, but I'll end up in an orange jumpsuit. And Mark said, well, I'm going to suffer. And after I'm gone, Kelly is going to pound the pavement, and she is going to be loud about this being a civil right.
French, do you concur with your sister, before we get into your mom, that this is a civil right?
I do. I believe that it's a civil right. I believe that if you don't have control of your body, that who should make that decision for you? And I know that it probably overlaps into abortion. To a certain degree, I think lately it overlaps into professional football,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
people start talking about the decisions that you can make with your body. And but this, it differs from abortion in that it's not about something that has not been born, that can't make a decision for itself. It's about a human that has lived their own life and knows that it's over and has chosen their own path. And it doesn't even mean that they're not religious. My mother was religious. She was a Golden Rules Christian. But she chose to live her own life with a certain degree of just humanity. And when it's over, it's over. And she wanted to make that decision.
So let me go back to my broad, stupid question, and then we're going to get into your mom.
Certainly.
And I'll start with you for a short answer. Then Kelly, I'll go to you for a short answer. Then I'll give my own short answer. Do you believe that human beings have a right to take their own life whenever they want?
I do. I believe that a human being has a right to end their story, and that no other human should be able to do that or make that decision for them.
Kelly, give me an answer to that.
I believe that a person who is suffering from a terminal illness has the absolute right to be aided in dying.
By the way, Kelly, I love the way you phrased that, but the politician I am, you set me up for a follow-up. I appreciated French's answer because it was blanket. You, Kelly, gave a specific answer. Anyone who is suffering has a right to take their own life. Do you believe, just in general, carte blanche, anybody at any stage of their life can kill themselves?
I believe that in this particular case, of course anybody could. The bottom line is these are people that have not had one, but it requires two medical doctors to say there is no path forward for you to ever recover from this. We are going to have to put you on hospice and keep you comfortable. which again is a relative term. So, and the thing for the religious, and I understand this is religious, and I just want to get in that a lot of people have opinions.
Yeah.
Even God sent a man down to earth and said, I want to end suffering. This is simply about ending suffering. And it's not for everybody, anytime, under any circumstance.
No,
It is for, again.
Yeah, Kelly, I agree. I find it interesting, and I'll go right at French. And I really appreciate your answer, Kelly. Like I've always thought, and this is my Catholic upbringing, your life is a gift from a God. You cannot take it. That was like French that was pounded into my head for 1,000 years. Your life is a gift. You can't take it. So I've always had kind of a blanket. Nobody has a right to kill themselves. But I'm kind of libertarian, so I've always fought. I've struggled with that, French.
I understand that too, because I'm sort of libertarian too, but I also believe that I am a part of God, and that I am a part of any decision that happens. I believe that I am a child of God, and that I'm a perfect reflection of God's perfection. And I believe that there comes a time when you actually you are reflecting God by making a decision that you feel is right. Because otherwise, what are you? You're an employee?
That's an interesting way to look at it. So,
it's not for everybody. I understand that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Hey, Kelly, so let's get into your mom and how we got to the point where she and the family decided this is how I'm going to end my life.
Well, after the congestive heart failure she was on hospice. The congestive heart failure was so extreme that even speaking, the breath it would take to get out a single sentence became difficult. She always felt like there was an elephant sitting on her chest and she was gasping most of the time.
Yeah.
And she had a wonderful hospice nurse. Everything was going okay, but she was continuing to get worse and worse and worse. And she said, I know my rights, and I cannot take one more night of having to be in this kind of extreme suffering. I am suffering.
And Kelly, was she on any medication for her pain at all?
Oh, everything.
Okay.
She was on all kinds of things, and those medications were being tweaked as only a fabulous hospice nurse can do, and a doctor regularly. But it wasn't enough to prevent suffering, unless, of course, we decided to put her in some kind of induced coma, which is not living and would not have represented any kind of dignity to her life. So
then Kelly, she said, that's it. I don't want to go through another day of this pain. You clearly seemed then you were knowledgeable on this issue after what happened to your husband. Then just logistically, then what do you do?
I contacted a wonderful doctor in Santa Fe, a doctor named Dr. Lynn Nauman, who is with Rites of Passage. And this is her service, is medical aid in dying. She ordered the drugs that you compound in preparation of this. And it requires that two doctors have already said she is terminal, she's not going to get better, and this will end in death.
Okay.
So that's already happened.
Okay.
The drugs were compounded. She talked to my mother and said, listen, you need to tell me what you want to do.
Who said that? Who had that conversation with her, Kel?
The doctor.
Got it.
Dr. Lynn Nauman with
Okay.
my beautiful mother, Helene. And Helene said in no uncertain terms, I completely understand that my ability to take this cocktail of drugs will end my life. And that is my choice, and that is what I want.
Hey, Kelly, when you were French, were either one of you with your mom when she said that point blank to the doctor?
We both were. We were there when she said it. She said it, days before, and then she is required to say it right before the cocktail is administered.
What did you think, French, when she said that? Like, what went through your...
I was sort of, I just felt relieved for her. I think the thing that, honestly, has to be said is that, she was my mother had an amazing intellect. She read 2 books a week. She watched the news. She was on top of things. She knew film. She knew all sorts of things. She was an intellect, and she.
Is it true, French, that politically she was a Tea Party person like me? Did I read that somewhere?
No, she was. Somebody once asked her. On the other side of the family, they're very, Republican, and they said, "Wait a second, we're having a conversation with you. Are you a liberal?" And she said, "No, I'm a bleeding heart liberal." So she's way more liberal than I am. I mean, I'm kind of middle of the road. I'm like a Goldwater Democrat Republic. I'm like in the middle.
Yeah.
But she, the thing is that she, I felt good about her discussion because we had talked about it, and we had talked about it again, and we had talked about it again. And my mother is not a frivolous person or a person who acts in the moment. And so I had seen how she was having a hard time staying in and out of life. She was uncomfortable, and she had made her decision. And so, to tell you the truth, I was proud of her, but I was proud of her in a different way. I had been proud of my Uncle Mike.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was just it didn't have to be that. And so I was proud of her then, and I'm proud of her now. And I also want to say that I'm proud of my sister. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, but there are certain relations in families where people have a job. And my job a lot of times was to be a politician and make things smooth between people, or fix things up, or, hey, let's laugh it off and let's move forward. My sister always had to do dirty work and bouncing and asking difficult questions in a measured way, and she always has. And so I'm very grateful to go through this with her.
Kelly, was there ever a point where you sensed any hesitation or doubt in your mom when she made up her mind?
None. And this had been her belief that this is what she wanted to have a right to do if and when it ever became legal in New Mexico, because she had seen my husband, who she loved very much, suffer.
Yeah.
And she knew, and I certainly know, being in the veterinary business, that, our animals that are in our family, we don't let them have one more bad day, and we allow them to transition peacefully. And she wanted that right. But she believed in it. It wasn't like one day she said, gosh, I think I'm having a hard day. I think today is the day I'd like to take my life. The disease was taking her life. She didn't want to take her life. The disease took it. So and no doctor could manage that.
So then, Kelly, she took the cocktail. What time of the day? And then did she just fall asleep at night? How did that work?
Well, we all gathered together, her best friend, her husband of 50 years, French, and myself. And we spent a lot of time in the afternoon. The doctor came around 5 o'clock, We spent time talking. The doctor wants there to be plenty of time, although they had had several conversations up to the time that she arrived at my mother's bedside. And my mother said she was ready. She took the compounded cocktails that the doctor had put together. It is one of those things where the doctor does not administer it. The person not only has to be mentally competent, but they also have to actually drink that cocktail themselves.
Right.
And she took the cocktail and she passed within 13 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
she passed peacefully. And I can tell you one of the things that's interesting to me is my grief over watching my husband linger and suffer has taken a toll. There is a different kind of grief that you experience when you know somebody has been allowed to go gently.
Yeah. Kelly, that's a wonderful way to put it. I think I got the numbers right. What I read, 1 in 5 Americans have access to medical aid in dying. I think it's legal in about 11 states. It's different. Go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead.
10 states in Washington, D.C.
10 states in Washington, D.C. Now, euthanasia is illegal in America. It's legal in much of Europe. And Kelly, I don't know if you or French are expert on this, but when we talk about medical aid in dying, euthanasia is illegal in America. Do you know the difference between the two?
Well,
I kind of do.
I think the thing is, medical aid in dying is very specific because, of course, euthanasia is a different term for a reason. But medical aid in dying is very specific because it's conditional. Euthanasia is illegal.
Yeah.
Medical aid in dying, and of course in other countries, even mental health issues, if they find somebody that's completely depressed in other countries, they allow for medical aid in dying. That's not the case here in the United States. We are talking about the terminally ill and mentally competent. And the reason I continue to go back to that is that's what makes it's conditional. It is those two things. And those two things have to be in place. Euthanasia is a broad term that applies to a lot of other things. You know, euthanasia in animals could be we use that term every single day.
Yeah.
And it's illegal, of course, when you're discussing euthanasia, but that's a broad term about ending life and death. That's why it is medical aid in dying. And what's interesting is, you know, when people used to use the term assisted suicide,
yeah,
that was also incorrect. You know, the American College of Legal Medicine filed an amicus brief before the United States Supreme Court in 1996, rejecting the term, and adopted a resolution in 2008 in which they publicly advocated the elimination of the word suicide from the lexicon created by a mentally competent, though terminally ill person.
All right, but Kelly and French, you can jump on my butt. Kelly, I'm going to push on that one, and then I'll go to French on this. That seems like political gobbledygook. And I know in politics we're always trying to apply the most acceptable term to something that we want. I mean, semantics, Kelly. Your mom decided.
Oh,
hey, you let me finish my thought, young lady, and then I'm coming to you. Your mom, like I look at it this way. Your mom decided to end her life. She decided to commit suicide, and you assisted her. Like, I have no problem with that terminology. French, do you?
Well, no, I think you can bend anything how you want by just saying the word suicide.
Right.
I mean, to me, it's a matter of saying I am
And that's got negative connotations. The word suicide
Right,
has
right.
negative connotations.
Yeah. But what it is she made a decision and we backed her up on that decision. And that we knew that she was a woman in her 80s who we trusted her opinion. And we respected her enough to give her what she wanted. When she passed away, I wasn't sad for her because I knew that she felt better and that she had gotten what she wanted. I felt sad for me
Yeah.
because I would have a great, over the course of our life, she would call me, we would talk once a week, and we moved from, family to friends where you have conversations. And she was a great conversationalist. I think that politically, I look at it from a point of view where a lot of times Republicans are saying, well, let the family decide, let it be states' rights,
Right.
let the community make its decision. But they do that right up to the point where you make your decision and they don't like it. And so there's another side to that, which is we want to make the decision for everybody, but pretend like we're letting.
And French, that's a great criticism. And I am libertarian. And that's always a contradiction that I've had with my stance on abortion. And you are exactly right. And I think most people on the right would answer you and say, okay, I'm libertarian, French, but you can't kill somebody. So that's why I feel the way I do about abortion, and that's why I feel the way I do about suicide. But that is a tension. Go ahead.
Well, but can you kill yourself? I mean, that seems like a libertarian thing to do.
Well, and that's in French, that's what's fascinating. That's why, like you, me, and Kelly, we kind of all had a different answer. Or technically, you and I had an answer. Kelly avoided the question. You, French,
No.
Kelly, I'm coming to you. French, you said yes. Anybody should have a right to end their life at any time. I struggle with that as a libertarian. Kelly said, oh, well, if somebody's suffering, they can take their life. But Kelly, I never heard you give a blanket yay or nay just on suicide in general.
That's because the thing about suicide, and that's why I don't see it as semantics, is a lot of times somebody who commits suicide is in a dark place where perhaps a physician or a psychiatrist, or there is a path forward, and it's unfortunate that they didn't find that path forward.
That's a tragedy.
With medical aid and dying, it's different. There's no path forward. You are in a cul-de-sac of suffering. So to me, this isn't really about semantics because it is different. The people that I have known that have committed suicide, really, I look and I think that's such a shame because maybe there was a path forward. If they were healthy, maybe they were depressed.
Except, Kelly, I will say from a politician's viewpoint, semantics matters. It's a lot harder to pass a bill that says, we want assisted suicide legal. It's a lot easier to pass a bill if you say, let's make medical aid in dying legal. It just sounds better. It sounds nicer. I mean, that's the way politicians always do it. It's a more acceptable term.
Also, like, I'm not just saying like thumbs up on suicide for anybody who wants it. Like, I think it has to be a structured conversation like the type we had with our mother. It can't be that some young guy went to a Cure concert and got sad and mopey and then just that was it because 7th grade isn't going well. It's a totally different thing. It has to be a conversation and a process, much like therapy or any doctor's visit where you're putting it together. But I hate the idea of somebody, making the decision for somebody else simply because their religious viewpoint doesn't align.
Fair. So Kelly and French, here are a couple of my concerns or objections to the whole medical aid in dying. One, I worry that it's kind of like a suicide contagion, like it will, and I don't know if studies have been done on this, but in states where it's legal, it might increase the rate of overall suicides. Kelly, does that make sense to you? It'll normalize suicide.
I understand. No, I understand where you're going with that, but there have been studies, and Compassion and Choices have done those studies as well, and that's actually not an issue. It's not a contagion. In New Mexico, since House Bill 47 was signed by our governor in April 8th of 2021, 500 people have approximately used medical aid in dying. And because it requires so much thoughtful discussions, and also doctors are involved saying, we cannot help this person.
Right.
It's different. It hasn't added to any other suicide rates or anything else. Unfortunately, those have been going up on their own for some time. I know in my profession, suicide is at an all-time high. Veterinarians have now taken over air traffic controllers from compassion fatigue. So I understand that's something that's a global issue, but definitely in the states that is legal, it has made zero impact in added numbers.
I don't doubt your research. I thought I read something somewhere. I know Oregon is a leader on this issue. Oregon's a leader on a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting, eclectic stuff. I thought I read somewhere where the overall suicide rate in Oregon increased after they legalized it, but I'll have to put that in front of you. My other concern, French and Kelly, is the slippery slope argument. Like right now, to get to die this way, medical aid in dying, you're right, Kelly. The criteria is very strict, but I worry that we're going to expand eligibility, and patients can eventually, once we make this legal. Again, this is the politician in me, French. We always expand the eligibility pool, and we'll make it easier to get this, besides just pain relief and you're terminally ill. I worry about that.
Yeah, I think one thing is that people will find a way always to mess something up.
Yeah, true.
The people who mess things up always mess things up. And at a certain point, you just have to put something logical in front of people that they can either respect or abuse, which they always do. I remember I went to a libertarian meeting one time, and they spent an hour talking about how, whether a 6-year-old should be able to drive a tractor if he was capable.
Well, that's
what it was like. That was the entire conversation. It's like, well, if he can do it, he should be able to do it. And then other people were like, well, but then other 6-year-olds are going to get up there and maybe they're not together. At a certain point, there's common sense which vacates.
Well, and that's why the Libertarian Party is still where they are politically. Kelly, the slippery slope argument that we're going to expand the eligibility for people who want this service.
I do understand, and I agree with French 100%. I mean, I understand how that's something we would, of course, have to think about. I don't see that. I think if there was ever any expansion in growing what the criteria was, it may be like what's happening in Switzerland, where they said we're going to expand this to people that are so severely depressed,
right.
They are incapacitated. So do I think that's a possibility? I do, but for us here in the United States, it is beyond strict. The criteria, I mean, it's very thoughtful.
So, French,
we think it should stay that way.
I agree. The other thing that worries me or bothers me about this is, and you can throw something at me if you want, because it probably didn't apply to your mom, but I'll ask about your mom. I worry that patients are just depressed, And depression will cause patients at any age to want this. And I mean, the difficult question is, you've described the state your mom was in, her
Right.
physical state, but is there a part of you, French, that thought she's depressed and she's because of where she is and she shouldn't
listen,
make this decision?
Yeah, I can understand how that would be a concern, and I think that that's probably, what moves this conversation and makes it a little bit wiggly. But with my mother, she was never depressed, and like she was one of those like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, have some grit. Tomorrow's going to be another day. Keep moving forward. And so when she got to this point where she was tapping out, I believed her.
Did you sense,
I,
French, did you ever sense in the later days just out, she's depressed? Did you ever think my mom's depressed?
well, I think that she was depressed by the fact that she was so sick and that she couldn't be what she wanted to be. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs to be in, but I don't think that it was the depression. The depression was fueled by her state.
So that's interesting, Kelly, because what French just said, then there's a part of me that would say, and I'm going to say point blank, I would have loved your mom. I don't know if she would have liked me. I would have loved your mom. But I would have, based on what French just said, Kelly, I would have said she's depressed about her physical state. She shouldn't make this decision. It's understandable that she's depressed, but she shouldn't make this decision.
Well, but wait a second. Like, Joe, if you're in agony, what's not to be depressed about?
Fair. Then I'll relieve your agony.
No, and that was Katie.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Suffering. She was suffering.
That's what French, yeah.
Suffering. She used to call me in the middle of the night to have conversations, and we would talk, and she'd just say, I feel like I can barely take a breath. I can't breathe. Her oxygen was on the maximum it could be. All of the comfort things that the wonderful hospice nurse could afford her was the maximum of everything. And the maximum of everything wasn't changing the outcome, that she was going to pass and that she was getting worse and worse and worse. And the thing about her is she was not fearful. When you talk about people that have a sense of a religious affiliation, she was not fearful at all. She said, this body no longer serves me, and I am ready to go.
Hey, French, if you had to guess, French, did your mom believe, like Kelly just said, I'm ready to go. She said, do you believe your mom believed she was going somewhere?
Yes, she believed she was going somewhere. I think the thing that's impressive about her intellect is she said she didn't know where. But I asked her, are you afraid? Like early on, because I was just trying to test her, and she said, I'm curious.
I love that.
I did too. It honestly, it was one of the things that made me feel best about it. She said, I don't know all the answers. I may have some notions, but I do not believe that I have come this far to be nothing. And so she believed that energy found a place, and I do too.
So I'm gonna close with a couple questions for both of you, and I've really appreciated this because oftentimes on my podcast I'm getting into some pretty rambunctious discussions about issues like should we allow teachers in schools to be armed? Kelly, don't respond to that. By the way, I support that, but I don't want to get into that right now, French. But this has been a fascinating issue because I've had an opinion on it. But again, I don't feel like it's a fully formed opinion. You both have helped me really think about this. Is it fair to say that both of you, Kelly and French, you believe this medical aid in dying should be legal in every state and you're comfortable keeping it where it is, like you don't want to expand or make it easier, the criteria we use right now? I don't want to speak for you, but French, you start. Is that kind of like what you'd like to see?
Well, I believe right now I'm comfortable with where it is, and I would like it to be in all 50 states. I mean, like with anything, there's always a a matter of making something better or having a better idea later that you didn't think about. But beyond that, I mean, I don't know. I would hand that over to Kelly, to tell you the truth.
Kelly, you'd like to see it everywhere?
I would. I would like to see it everywhere. I know it's the legislature is working on it in New York right now, and so I'm hoping it becomes legal in New York. I want to see it everywhere, and I am 100% comfortable with the criteria as it is right now until something changes that persuades me otherwise. I want it everywhere, and I like the terms.
I'm going to ask two short personal quickies, and then we'll be done. But again, I want to reiterate my thank you to you both, because you've educated me on this damn conversation, and you've got me thinking. French, I'm going to start with you. Your mom was how old when she passed?
She was 82.
Okay. Go back in your mom's whole life, your life with her. Give me one freaking experience with her that you remember and you freaking loved. Give me one mom story. And Kelly, I'm going to ask you for the same damn thing.
Okay. When I was in the 6th grade, I was in the cafeteria, and we were in public school in Albuquerque. And at the end of the week, they would take all the things that nobody had eaten on a Friday and put it all together. And they called it Western style cheese dip sandwich. And so I sat there and I couldn't eat it. And I had a coach that was telling me, you better eat it. And I couldn't eat it. And finally he called my mom.
Uh-oh.
And my mom came down and she looked at it and she said, you want him to eat this? And he said, yeah, it's part of the deal. And she said, nah, he's not eating that shit. And then she left.
Did she really?
Yeah, and I felt backed up because it wasn't like I was a problem kid or anything, but I wasn't going to eat Western style cheese dip sandwich.
I love that. Your mom had your back. Your mom had your back.
Yeah, back. Yeah.
Kelly, give me one mom story from anything.
Well, like French, it goes back to school, because in those years when she was helping support us and we were young and not always making the best decisions, I remember coming home after having been to the bank at my first job at Western Warehouse, where I had to wear a ginormous yellow badge that looked like a sheriff's badge. And I had gone out with my friend, and we had smoked a little weed, and I was depositing my first check, and I went home, and I'd taken the bank cylinder with me.
Oh, Kelly. Kelly.
Yes. Bank had called my mom, and she looked at me and she said, something didn't look right here. And the thing is, my mother was not somebody who was she instilled such a conscience in us that sometimes I wish she was somebody that would have spanked us.
Yeah.
I would have taken the spanking over her ever saying, for shame. And she said, it's not a good look, Kelly, to be fuzzy. The women in our family get better generation by generation. Pull it together.
Pull it together. I like that. Hey, last one, quickie, French. I'm starting with you. What did your mom think of Trump?
Well, she just thought that he was a con man and just a Hollywood game show host that came in and conned the South. And she thought that he was a cult leader, and I think that bears out.
Your mom was spot on. Kelly, what would your mom have thought? What did your mom think of Trump? It was French on.
He's spot on. I think the main thing is she used to say this is the most dangerous president we have ever had. Dangerous.
Well, on that note, if your mom were still with us, she'd be rooting me on as I do all I can to make sure he doesn't win. Kelly McEwen and French Stewart, this has been a really, really helpful, fascinating conversation. I mean it. Medical aid in dying. Kelly down in Albuquerque, thank you. French Stewart, a wonderfully successful actor. By the way, French, You have a movie coming out?
Yeah, I do. I have a movie coming out with John Leguizamo, and it'll be announced in a few short days. So I have to shut up for a minute.
Okay, he can't talk about it, but I can't wait for that. Thank you both for this. This has been wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for the platform. We appreciate your thoughtful conversation. We really do.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.